On Tuesday, October 9th, 2012, in Dover, New Hampshire, 19-year-old marine biology student Elizabeth Marriott goes missing after a late class. Her last known whereabouts was her work friend's house, 19-year-old Catherine McDonough. Catherine grew up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and was known to have a sweet and gentle personality. Through her teenage years, her relationship with her parents was combative, as she felt as though she could not be herself around them. Catherine had always planned to move out of her family home as soon as she had turned 18, and said that during school, she gravitated towards acting as a way to express herself. Acting became a great passion for Catherine, and as her love for it developed, her skill did not go unnoticed. At 17 years of age, Catherine would land a starring role in the Lawrence Hennessy play called Last Rites. This was to be performed at the Players Ring, which is a local theatre company in Portsmouth. Her co-star was 28-year-old Seth Mazalia. Seth was born in 1982 in Portsmouth and had what many would consider a decent upbringing, as his family was well off and he would receive expensive private schooling. At the age of 9, Seth would begin to take karate lessons with his father and developed a keen interest in martial arts. After obtaining a black belt, Seth would go on to teach karate in the Jittery Recreation Center in Maine, and would hold this position here for a number of years. He would then go on to study at the University of New Hampshire, and in 2006, he graduated with a degree in theatre and performance. Seth has been known to describe himself as, quote, an experienced actor, writer, and fight choreographer who has been working professionally and non-professionally throughout the theatres of southern New Hampshire for many years, end quote. In addition to his pursuit of theatre and performance, Seth had also trained to be a certified EMT, but never worked in this field. Records show that he graduated from Citizens Police Academy in 2011 and passed all background checks. He was never known to have violent tendencies and didn't have a criminal record, and he was described by many as an intelligent and calm man. Underneath the surface, though, ones that were close to Seth knew him to have a strange hidden life. Seth would say that he has multiple identities existing in his body, and at different times, different personas would take him over. He held a belief that these identities were ancient eternal spirits, entities who chose some people to inhabit, he himself being one of these carriers. And he would say that these chosen people have a more dominant position over others in this life. The spirits inhabiting his body had many different names, and he often referred to himself as either Darkheart, Wildcard, Cirrus, Pongo Robust, the Nameless One, and Doomsday, although Doomsday was described to be more of an event rather than a persona. An ex-girlfriend who dated Seth when he was in college and she in high school would say that throughout their relationship she lived in constant fear. She had moved in with him very early on and had over time become terrified of living with him, but even more terrified of what he may do to her if she ever left. She says, at the beginning everything was great. He brought me flowers and he was very caring, but over time he became more controlling and the sex would get very rough. She remembers one time that he was choking her during intercourse, rendering it very difficult for her to breathe. Even at times it became impossible. Upon telling him to stop, he would not, and the moment didn't end upon her request. Seth did not apologize to her afterwards for this, and instead told her that he fantasizes about murder a lot. In addition to the increasingly violent sex, he always wanted to bring other women into the bedroom and became obsessed with finding a third person to fill this role. The ex-girlfriend says that this relationship was a slow descent into a position in her life where she had no choices. He had taken total control over everything that she did, and the only way that she was able to escape was to run away when he wasn't home and to go into hiding. So this man, Seth Mazalia, and Catherine McDonough performed together on a Portsmouth stage, and when the show had come to an end, a romantic relationship between the two begun. Friends of Catherine say that she was smitten by the older man, falling for him very quickly. In no time at all, Catherine moved in with him in his Dover apartment and cut ties with her family. Seth was said to have been the one who encouraged this severance of communication, and would refer to her mother as Mother Dragon. On the topic of dragons, one of the spirits that Seth said would inhabit his body was actually an ancient dragon, and discussing this with Catherine allowed her to further her own spiritual and supernatural beliefs. It is unclear if Catherine had held these beliefs prior to meeting Seth, but she would also say that there are multiple spirits inhabiting her body, 5 in total, and that the relationship with him very much encouraged these ideas. She said that Seth was a very powerful individual, one who would be granted unique powers when under the control of different entities, powers such as the ability to see into the future, and at times alter it. Here is an excerpt from a letter presented at the trial of Seth Mazalia to display this part of their lives. It was written by Seth and delivered to Catherine.
Dear Scarlett, my love, I love you, I miss you. I write this because you requested it. It is a backup in case everything goes wrong. That is all it is. Trust in my judgment, accept Murphy's help, and all this will be rendered moot. This letter explains and begins spelling out rituals to reset and recall past lives. Of course, if all else fails, a return to Sovngarde is always possible, if not ideal. Trust in Murphy, trust in me. Our life together here in this world may change, but it will be long, good, and we can have it. And I want every moment with you I can get. We can do it, just follow my lead. Here is the first of the instructions for a reset recall ritual. Death, rebirth needs to occur, ideally within seconds of the 2 spirits/souls in question. A tether can be placed for a straggler to focus on. It won't last long though. 7 days until sunrise of the 8th day maximum is the absolute point of failure. This time frame and these rituals also apply to a blind trip to Sovngarde with recall intended in a new life, as opposed to a reset. Recall would happen anyway, but not nearly as effectively. A 3-day delay of the reset, you need to follow through 2 lessers or 1 major. For 7 days, 1 major and 2 lessers or 2 majors. If at any point you do more than necessary, the extra energy will help. So within the time limit, do as many as you can, and then come visit me in Sovngarde. As you do them, envision draining energy from the people you interact with and recipes you eat, same as doing a ritual. I love you, my Scarlett, always and forever, your Darkheart.
If that has confused you, you are not alone. The letter there did not make much sense to me either. But what it does do, I feel, is adequately highlight how these two would communicate with one another. In her final semester of high school, Catherine dropped out and got a job working at Target. Through her relationship with Seth, the man had introduced her to the world of BDSM, and friends of the couple would say that she enjoyed this lifestyle just as much, or if not more than Seth did himself. Some of their friends testified to say that when they went over to visit the couple, Seth and Catherine would at times have sex in front of their guests at Catherine's request. In interviews though later on, Catherine would say that the reason she dived so deeply into this sexual lifestyle was because she wanted to please Seth, that she was so head over heels in love with him and would do anything and everything she could to please him, stating that as she looks back on the relationship long after it's ended, many of these acts that she performed, including brutal and violent sex, she was not comfortable with at all. Catherine would say, as the relationship developed, he did not allow her to have any male friends. He constantly monitored her phone and emails, and would discourage her from any activities that meant she would leave his sight. Catherine would need to obtain his permission for anything that she wanted to do. Seth defends himself here by saying that Catherine came from an abusive family, and that he was doing all that he could to protect her, to keep her away from those monsters. There was a letter which was shown during the trial, and this was used to highlight the way that the two would communicate in relation to the sexual side of their relationship. Quote, "From Catherine, to my love, I want you to attack me. I need to be dominated. I have clothing you can tear off me, even cut off me." This paragraph, as you can see, has been heavily redacted, so I will skip it. "I'm aroused, and I want to be hit and thrown down. I really want to be tied up, tight. I will be your submissive. Oh, and I know you get jealous when I call Cirrus certain names during our fun. I can call you anything you want if we can have fun. Leave bruises. Love, the willing." Seth would reply to this, "To thee, my willing. I will dominate you, brutally, without mercy, leaving my marks upon you. You will be known as mine by the way I tie you, bind you. Others will watch as I command your submission, as you fall prey to my whims. I am your lord, you, my lady, are my toy. I will use you until your exhaustion, and then command still more. Your love." End quote. A few months before Elizabeth's disappearance, an advertisement was placed by Catherine on a number of adult websites. It reads, "Dom switch couple looking for female slave sub in Dover, New Hampshire. My lord and I are looking to acquire a live-in slave for sexual pleasure and housework. He is the dom of the house and the master. He is also 30 years old. I am a nymphomaniac switch, and I switch from slave, sub, dom, so you may never know what mood I'm in. That is how our household works. We also have a cat. Our slave would be expected to keep the apartment in order, do the dishes, laundry, and some of the cooking. Also to be available for some form of sex at potentially any given time. We wouldn't expect you to have a job outside of the house. What happens in your free time will be approved by the master. We would plan to meet up with any potentials in person if interested, to discuss the household further and see if you have any specific requests. Then we would invite you in for about a month for a trial period to see how it works. And if by the end of the month we decide to part ways, so be it. If on the other hand you are to stay, we can adjust what needs adjusting and go on with the agreement. This can be for a little while or long term. Be aware that we choose our long-term companions very carefully, unlike many men and women who are willing to dive right into things on all levels. Even though we are physically intimate right away, we will take our time to circle you mentally and emotionally. We want to know who you are, what you are, how you respond under different pressures. We want to know your interests and hopes and goals in life. We will want to know you and be sure of you beyond a doubt in our minds. If you are interested at all, please contact us, as we would love to chat and discuss the possibilities. Even though the couple never found someone to fill this role, they did post another ad which was more successful. 6 weeks before Elizabeth vanished, Catherine was going away for 12 days to work as a theatre instructor at a performance camp based in Maine. Seth had tasked Catherine with the job to find a sexual partner for him, to take her place whilst she was to be absent. The woman that responded to the ad backed out at the last minute, and Seth was furious. Catherine had already left by this stage, and Seth sent her a text message expressing his frustration. This text message was read out in its entirety during the trial, but only a portion of it has been unsealed for the public. In the first part of the message, Seth says that he will punish Catherine for going away and leaving him. The punishment was to be in the form of brutal and violent sexual humiliation, something that Catherine confirmed did happen, and was a point in their relationship where she was very uncomfortable, but she had no idea how to say no. The second part of the message reads as follows. The second price is this. You choose a friend, any of yours will do, and you offer her to me, that I may do anything I wish with her while you watch and assist in any way I might command you to do so. Ideally, this friend watches your punishment and helps, but I'll settle for someone who I interact with directly while you watch. I think it would be fitting if the first thing you saw me do when you got back is pleasure one of your friends until they died, and only then turn my brutal attention to you. Weeks pass, and pressure is continuously placed on Catherine to find another sexual partner. She asks many people to join them in the bedroom, including couples that she works with, and eventually her attention turns to Elizabeth Marriott. Elizabeth Marriott grew up in Westborough, Massachusetts, and her mother would say that her daughter had loved the ocean and its creatures from a very young age, doing things such as helping turtles cross roads and placing beached sea creatures back into the water. Her parents would take their family to the ocean frequently, and they would watch with joy as Elizabeth pointed out sea creatures to strangers and explained to them what each one is. As she grew older, she became a volunteer at the New England Aquarium, and her passion for the ocean would lead her to apply for the marine biology program of the University of New Hampshire. Her application was successful, and in October of 2012, Elizabeth would transfer to Durham to undertake these studies. This was said to be a difficult decision for her because although the course was her dream come true, She was leaving her much-loved family and her partner Brittany behind. Upon arriving in Durham, Elizabeth would move in with her aunt and uncle and took a job working at a local Target at nights. This is where she met co-worker Catherine McDonough. The two bonded over a shared interest in the game Dungeons & Dragons. Catherine would say that she believed Elizabeth might be open to the idea of a threesome with Seth, as she learned that Elizabeth had a female partner, meaning that she would be okay with the idea of being sexually intimate with another woman. In addition to this, Catherine would discuss BDSM and the type of sex that her and Seth would engage in, and she said that Elizabeth seemed very open-minded in regards to this subject. Because of this, she thought that Elizabeth would be a good candidate to introduce to Seth. A week before Elizabeth's disappearance, she is invited to hang out at Catherine's house. When she visits, the three get along very well, and Seth offers for Elizabeth to come over anytime if she would like somewhere to hang out. On Tuesday, October 9th, 2012, Elizabeth had a late university lecture which ended at 9 p.m. She texted her aunt and uncle and said that she was going to a friend's house to hang out for a few hours and would be home before midnight. She also tells a fellow workmate that she'll be visiting Catherine on this night. Elizabeth finishes her university class and texts her girlfriend saying, "You are so cute," then drives to Dover. She arrives at the apartment a little after 9 p.m. and sits around a table talking with Seth and Catherine. They discuss what they are going to do for the evening and land on a game of strip poker. What happens from this moment on is only known by Seth and Catherine, and the story does change multiple times. What we do know as fact though are a few details, and these are as follows. At a point in the night, a few text messages are exchanged between Catherine and Seth. At 10:28 p.m., Seth texts his partner and asks if they are painting tonight, a code word that Catherine recognizes to mean sexual intercourse with Elizabeth. Catherine replies a minute later and says, "It's your decision, I guess, if you have a plan." Nervous. Shortly after this, at around 10:45 p.m., multiple witnesses who live in the apartment complex report hearing a scream, but none of them contact law enforcement. Then at 10:56 p.m., Seth texts his friend Roberta Gherkin to come over to his place to help with something. Roberta arrives shortly after 11 p.m. with her boyfriend Paul Hickok. They both witnessed Elizabeth's dead body on the floor, wearing only underwear, and she had multiple plastic bags tied around her head. Roberta removed the bags using a box cutter and noticed that Elizabeth's face was blue and had ligature marks around her neck. Roberta checks for a pulse and does not find one. Both of these witnesses testify to seeing Catherine in the fetal position, rocking back and forth in the kitchen, and Seth was sitting on the sofa repeating the words, "I've gone too far this time. I've gone too far." Roberta and Paul urge Seth to contact authorities, but as they were leaving, they overhear the couple engage in a conversation about how they will dispose of Elizabeth's body. Paul and Roberta both decide to leave and choose to not contact authorities that night, nor in the days following. Roberta says in her testimony that she wanted to give her friend the opportunity to do the right thing. This has baffled many people, and despite moral outrage aimed at their lack of responsibility, according to New Hampshire law, there is no requirement to report a crime if you are witness to it. Because the two did not assist with either the murder or the cover-up, they could not be considered an accomplice and charged accordingly. The next day, Elizabeth's family, partner, and friends are becoming increasingly worried that they have not heard from her, and authorities are alerted. A search commences immediately, and investigators quickly learn that Elizabeth went to visit Catherine on the night of her disappearance. Catherine and Seth are brought in and questioned separately. Catherine lies to police and says that Elizabeth never made it to their apartment that night. She even shows police text messages showing that she had organized plans with Elizabeth. But then there's another at 11:30 p.m. where Catherine had messaged Elizabeth asking if she was still coming to their house. After not hearing back from her friend, Catherine says that she proceeded to go to a graveyard on her own to try take photos of spirits. After 2 hours of questioning, Catherine's interview with police is over and she is released. Seth, on the other hand, begins to talk. He initially says that when he got home that night, Elizabeth was already dead in his apartment and that she had died whilst having sex with Catherine and another man. Over the course of 11 hours though, this interview eventually leads him to say that he was the man who was involved, and that Elizabeth had died during rough but consensual sex. He says that it was an accident and that they were introducing Elizabeth to the world of BDSM. They had placed a harness on her, one where the restraints would tighten around her neck, and during intercourse, Seth was pulling these restraints whilst Catherine's body was covering Elizabeth's face. Before either of them knew what was happening, Elizabeth had begun to seizure and shortly after passed away. Elizabeth's body was then stuffed into a suitcase. Catherine sends Elizabeth a text message asking if she's coming over, and immediately after, the two switch their phones off so that their locations cannot be traced. Using Elizabeth's vehicle and avoiding all tolls, they drive to Pierce Island, and from a location near the eastern side of it, they throw Elizabeth over a railing into the Piscataqua River, a river known to have strong currents running to the ocean. He and Catherine then proceeded to dispose of items of clothing, a tarp, and many more around different dumpsters in town. They drive Elizabeth's vehicle back to her university and dispose of more of her items, like her pocketbook and her socks. They leave the vehicle in the parking lot and then walk the 6 miles back to their apartment. Seth is arrested after this interview and Catherine is brought back in for questioning. This time, she changes her story and says that Elizabeth did come to her apartment that night. During this interview, Catherine does back up Seth's version of events, saying that this was one big accident, that everything was consensual and it all went too far. After the game of strip poker, she says that the three had begun to dance, which led to sexual touching. Then Seth presented the idea of experimenting with bondage. She claims that Elizabeth agreed to this, so the harness was placed on her, and she stopped breathing during a moment where Catherine's body was pressed against her face. A search for Elizabeth's body commences around the waterways of Pierce Island, and the locations where evidence was disposed are searched. During the search, articles of clothing are recovered, some of which were in the trash behind Seth's apartment. The items found behind his apartment included a pair of his underwear with Elizabeth's DNA on them, Elizabeth's sweatshirt, and a pair of black leather gloves. As the investigation progresses, detectives begin to uncover holes in this story and believe that Seth was the one who murdered Elizabeth, and that this was not an accident at all. Without Elizabeth's body being found, though, the case against him for first-degree murder is weak, and Elizabeth's family is approached to discuss a plea deal. Prosecutors wish to offer Catherine McDonough the opportunity to tell the truth, in exchange for immunity against all charges relating to the murder of Elizabeth. So on December 25th, 2012, Catherine is arrested on charges of hindering apprehension or prosecution, and the state offer her the immunity against murder charges. She takes the deal and pleads guilty to hindering prosecution, receiving 3 years in prison, and then changes her story once more. This time, she says that it is the truth, something that she has been wanting to say for a while now. Catherine now says that during the game of strip poker, Seth had won a hand, and as a new rule that he implemented, he got to request the others to do something. What he wished was for Elizabeth to kiss Catherine. Elizabeth refused to do this, stating that she is in a long-term and committed relationship and doesn't want to mess that up. A little later on, Seth then asks if Elizabeth will watch as he and Catherine have sex in front of her, and once again Elizabeth refuses this. This is said to have angered Seth, as Catherine says he very rarely gets told no. She could tell that he was visibly frustrated. Seth abruptly and awkwardly ends the game of strip poker, and the ladies move to the floor of the living room to begin watching a movie. Seth eventually sits on the lounge behind them. While they are watching the movie, Seth approaches from behind, and wearing black leather gloves, he wraps a rope around Elizabeth's neck, beginning to strangle her. Catherine says that he held it tight against her for what seemed to be like 10 minutes, and before he released the tension, he asked Catherine to check for a pulse. She does as she's told and finds none. Catherine goes to the bathroom to splash cold water on her face, and when she comes back out, she sees Seth, who is having sex with Elizabeth's lifeless body on the floor. As he is doing this, he is calling her obscenities and insults. At this point onwards, Catherine's version of events is the same as I outlined earlier, with a few added details. Elizabeth was dragged from the vehicle by her feet to the cliff's edge, and when she was thrown over, she did not land in the water, but instead fell 35 feet onto the hard rocks. The two climbed down, and Catherine was instructed to push Elizabeth's body into the currents, as Seth said that he was too exhausted to do it himself. As Catherine was moving Elizabeth's body further into the river, Seth would make the comment, "Welcome to Davy Jones' locker." Seth Mazalia's trial for first-degree murder commenced on May 27, 2014, and the state would have a difficult task to prove his guilt without having recovered Elizabeth's body. Their entire case rested on the shoulders of their star witness's testimony, Catherine McDonough, and they would need to prove that this person, who had now changed her story 3 times, was credible. Catherine would take the stand, and that's where she stayed for 6 long days of examination, and 4 more days for cross. The state paints Catherine as a victim, someone who was oppressed and controlled down to every inch of her existence, a victim who did not know how to get out of the situation that she was in. The defense, on the other hand, would portray Catherine in a completely different way. They would show her as the manipulator, the one who was obsessed with finding another woman whom she could dominate, someone who was equally a creator of this fantasy world she lived in, controlled by multiple personalities, and very much a consensual player in their BDSM lifestyle. To build this hammer that would attempt to break her credibility, the defense would start by highlighting that in the months which followed Seth's arrest, Catherine maintained a romantic relationship with the man, only ending it when she had taken the plea deal to testify against him. A phone call was recorded between Seth and Catherine while he was being held and awaiting trial, and this was played to the jury to not only weaken Catherine's position as a meek and timid victim, but they would pose the question: how could Catherine love this man after she witnessed him murder a woman, then sexually abuse her corpse?
You could just get married one way or another.
That's what I was saying. Actually, I've been trying to figure out what the policy of marriage while someone's in jail is.
I know you can do it.
Yeah, it's just figuring
out. I
out.
looked it up online.
Yeah. If you look in and find some way to do that, and you want to do that, I mean, I envision myself getting a ring and doing this all proper, but at the same time, yeah.
But I think, you know how we were talking about doing it just for the legal reasons, just, for the health care and things like that?
Oh, that too.
But, you know how we were talking about just getting it done, and then afterwards...
Oh, yeah, and then having the real ceremony later.
That's what I was thinking about, just no matter what happens, getting married anyways.
Yeah,
no,
I am fine with that.
Because I would hate, I hate having to say, it's just my boyfriend. I want to say, he's my husband.
Oh, yeah, no, it drives me nuts whenever they ask, what's your marital status? Single, married, divorced, widowed, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I keep wanting to say married and this is my wife.
Yeah. I've been engaged a couple times. And some jails require me to write a letter why I would actually want to marry someone. And then they can approve it.
I would hope madly in love would count.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we can find other reasons too.
I've definitely been thinking it for a while, but I decided to actually tell you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, because I was thinking that would be...
I had been thinking about approaching you about something similar to that, but I didn't know how you'd react other than, I figured there'd be a positive reaction, but I wasn't sure how to approach for it.
No, I understand. It's definitely, it's harder for the person in my position.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard on the other end, too, here. All of a sudden, there I am, like, how the hell do I provide for you? Blah blah blah. How do I be the man? But at the same time, we are a couple who can find a way. We are the aberration. We may have to set some records here, but we are the aberration. But yeah, no, I'm all for
That's
it.
what I was thinking, and then, you don't even have to tell that many people at all.
Oh, it essentially, except for the witnesses, anybody who might listen to this call. I'm sure there are, there'd be people who knew, but it doesn't have to be a huge, big announced thing.
I want that.
No, I want it too. So, yeah, you figure out how to make it happen, and we'll make it happen. It's scary how on the same wavelength we get sometimes. I like it. You know, it's nice. It's nice to know we think alike, even with our variances. But the variances are what makes it fun. You know. But I like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to go sit down and write you out a letter real quick so that you can have it in the morning.
Fair enough. I do look forward to those.
You got today's, right?
Yes, I did. So I'll call you tomorrow. Right now I got a bolt. I got like 30 seconds, but...
I love you, always and forever.
I love you too, always and forever.
The defense attorney asks how she could want to marry this man who committed such horrible acts in front of her, and Catherine replies, "It was easier than confronting the truth. I loved him and I thought that he was protecting me." The defense would also claim that in her original story, the one where her body smothered and killed Elizabeth, there were too many fine details to make up on the spot like that. So they played the entire recorded interview where Catherine describes and enacts exactly how she said Elizabeth originally passed away.
I'm sorry, Seth was what?
Kind of not instructing her, but kind of like saying, you can do this. Why don't you do this?
Okay, so he was telling
Yeah.
Lizzie things she could do to you or to him or both?
To me.
You said that you were sitting on Lizzie's face for probably 10 or 15 minutes, and you described that you were kneeling with your heels behind you.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me a little more? How are you actually...
just show you.
Okay. Do you mind if I actually
Yeah, no problem.
move this? So,
It was like this.
okay, so that's how...
Yeah, and then I could do that and lean how I wanted to using my muscles
Okay, and Lizzie's
on the ground.
on the ground between your legs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You had no clothes
I
on?
had no clothes on.
Okay.
And it had gotten to the point where I had been taking jewelry off.
Okay, I knew you'd mentioned
Yeah.
jewelry. That was after you were totally naked.
No, I think I was down to like underwear, and I started going like, all right, my glasses, my rings, my bracelets, and I was like, okay.
Okay.
Now I'm down to nothing. So
were you crossed basically
yeah.
off then? Okay.
And as to be expected, Seth's defense attorney does not hold back during the brutal cross-examination as he tries to prove that Catherine is a compulsive liar, one that had concocted this story of murder only after being offered a plea deal.
Talked about taking her body out. You did not flinch.
It's because I was making up a story. I was adding details, but a lot of it was just a story. It wasn't real, so I was able to push the images aside and just think about keeping up with the fake story I was telling you. And then, right now it's just, this is when it's really being told. This is when everyone's finding out. This is when her family really gets to find out. And this is when I'm sitting in the same room as him.
You really told these same facts and claims to the grand jury. You cry without tears, Miss McDonough?
What?
You cry without tears?
I don't know. Sometimes, I guess.
Your response to the supposed code to rape Liz Marriott was your decision, I guess. If you have a plan, nervous.
Well, I didn't know if he was actually going to rape her. I thought that potentially he would just take me in front of her and just having sex with me and see what happened.
Isn't the truth just this? You went over and closed the curtain to hide what you had just done.
No.
Well, Seth was busy trying to take the harness off.
No. There was no harness on her.
That after she had a seizure and stopped breathing, you went over to the window to hide what you had just done.
No, I went over to the window. I hadn't done anything. He was in the process of murdering her. I thought that if I tried to get any help or if I tried to stop him, that would be it for me too. In that moment, I was caught between all of those emotions and the fact that I still loved him and didn't want to lose him. All of those were hitting me really hard and I didn't know what to do.
Despite the defense's argument, which is, in my opinion, a rather convincing one, ultimately, the jury finds Seth Mazelia guilty of first-degree murder, and he is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the time of his sentencing hearing, Seth did not wish to attend and put in a request to not be present, as he says that he didn't want to listen to the victim impact statements. He would say that he felt as though it was unfair he would have to listen to the family speak to him, as he firmly states that he did not murder their loved one. In a recorded conversation that he had with his mother, he would say, quote, "It's a waste of my time. I already know what everyone is going to say there. Why do I have to be there? I don't want to listen to her family whine, bitch, and moan." End quote. His mother's response to him saying this is, "Please have compassion for their loss, Seth. You have to understand that they've lost the one they love so dearly. I would be the same if it were you." His motion to not attend the sentencing was withdrawn at the last minute, and he did end up facing Elizabeth's family's words.
"You have taken the life of my niece for your own disgusting fantasy without any remorse, because you are incapable of feeling any remorse, except for yourself, of course. I have witnessed my family age before my eyes after having to go through this trial and what you have taken from us. I know in a psychopath's mind that the words and feelings I am expressing right now have no effect. You will continue to believe somehow you are innocent of your cowardly act. I will not waste time on you."
Lizzie would call to ask if she and Brittany could come up for the weekend. Always my answer was yes, looking forward to seeing you. They came up 2 to 3 times over the summer. The last time they came up, they asked me to join them for dinner in town at our outdoor cafe. She drove me home and thanked me again for a great time.
Mr. Mazelia, it's been a rough day for you. I'd like to help you understand what a beautiful life is. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Really, close your eyes and concentrate. Do you remember the smell of an early spring rain? The plush green of new leaves and the color of new flowers blossoming? Can you hear the song of a spring peeper signaling the end of winter? Flash forward to summer. It's a hot day with a cool breeze blowing. The noise of gulls mixed with the buzz of bees. Smell of fried dough drifts through the air. Does it bring back any memories? Because of you, Lizzie will never get to enjoy these again. Blue skies will reflect her crystal blue eyes. When the splash of the ocean waves lap over our feet, we'll remember her dream of being a marine biologist and making a difference. The brisk autumn breeze that causes us to pull our coats tight will remind us of her honest and freely given hugs. Your evil act has torn her from us. Your selfish action has hurt this family far deeper than you can ever imagine. Your disgusting, brutal crime has scarred her friends. Your twisted, perverse depravity has hurt your own family. Society, in fact, looks upon you with disgust and disdain. I hope that you truly miss all the things that you never get to enjoy again. I hope you have a long and healthy life inside concrete and steel and never, ever get to enjoy the most beautiful things in the world. You do not deserve anything.
The first part of my speech is to give you 3 words and the definitions thereof. Predatory, characterized by a tendency to victimize or destroy others for one's own gain. Predator, an animal that lives by preying on others. Animal, a person of inhuman character, someone who is like a beast or a brute, someone who takes by force. These 3 words describe you, Mr. Mazzaglia. You will, as animals do, spend the rest of your life in a cage. I wake up each morning thinking, how can this be? My head knows, my heart does not. Thank you, Judge.
My name is George W. Bentley, and I'm the great-uncle of Elizabeth Lizzie Marriott. I've never been an intentionally mean person, but today I feel that you have turned me into one. So here goes. Prior to preparing my victim's impact statement for your first-degree murdering accomplice, Princess Scumbag, I asked the state for permission to address you as the scumbag, as you seem to enjoy nicknames. Sicko, animal, pervert, and deadheart are also considered. I had to use a dictionary, a thesaurus, and Google in order to find terminology and filthy, rotten words that I felt you would relate to. You'll have to understand that my family and I were brought up under honest, clean-living, law-abiding, and God-fearing conditions. I'm sure that you were also brought up under similar conditions. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, you were even provided what most people would consider a pampered lifestyle, starting off with a private secondary education at prestigious Brewster Academy, followed by a 4-year free ride at UNH. I also understand one of your favorite roles in your very limited and unsuccessful stage career was usually as a tough guy, villain, or thug. This is derived from your endless desire to put the feeling of fear in the people that surround you. This fear, under the guise of love at first, is what you used on Princess Scumbag. What a pathetic persona. Family freeloading sponge. You could not even support yourself at the apartment. Must have been great to have dear old dad in the same complex picking up the rent tab every month. What'd you do with your earnings? Blow it on bondage equipment and readings at Roberta's? Convicted first-degree murderer, rapist, and necrophiliac. I had to look that one up because Daniel Webster's dictionary doesn't contain it. So it's the end of the road, pal. What an impressive resume. I do not want to see you rot in jail at the cost of the taxpayers of the state of New Hampshire. It is truly depressing to hear about the rights and privileges that scum like you have available in prison. You should have no rights whatsoever. You gave them up when you set up my beautiful great niece for a sacrifice. I hope that you reach the point that you have a renewed thoughts of suicide and are successful in the fulfillment of that action. It would be suitable to a coward like you. Ask the gods for 700 count sheets. They should work. An absolutely pathetic, inhumane being like you has no useful, logical reason to remain on this earth.
Mr. Mazzaglia, I'm Melissa Marriott. I'm Lizzie's mother, and I want you to know unequivocally that I hate you. You're a cowardly and despicable person. I rarely do anything that I did with Lizzie. It feels disloyal. We shop together all the time. Over the past 22 months, I've maybe been to the mall 6 times. No manicures, no pedicures, maybe 3 trips to Boston. We loved the city. We went all the time for no reason at all. We used to go to Hampton Beach several times a summer. I can't imagine going to the ocean in New Hampshire ever again. I finally went back to the aquarium for the first time this April. I wanted to see the reservation. I cried my way past the cuttlefish, the sea dragons, the octopus, and the edge of the sea exhibits. My personal tour guide is gone. I miss Lizzie every day. I wake up in the morning and she's gone. I go to bed at night and she's still gone. I know she's never coming home, and yet even after 22 months, I still have trouble comprehending that she's never coming home. And all because a cowardly 30-year-old man could not deal with a confident young woman. Thank you, Your Honor.
As we draw to the close of this video, I think there's one more detail that at the very least you may find interesting. About 6 months before his trial, Seth Mazzaglia shared a cell with Ryan Bachman, a prisoner who was nearing the end of his sentence. Seth had told Ryan that there were 2 witnesses that were going to testify against him, his longtime friends Roberto Gherkin and Paul Hickok. Seth told his cellmate that he would like these 2 to be hunted and killed, as them not being around would help his case immeasurably. Seth gave Bachman the addresses of these 2 witnesses and provided the man access to his bank account, asking him to hire someone to do this job. In addition to these hits being placed, there was more to the plan. Seth wanted Bachman to use what money he had to buy and sell drugs, and then use that money to buy guns, explosives, disguises, 2 getaway vehicles, and a boat of some kind, so that if the witnesses could not be eliminated, the plan would be that when Seth was in transit for a scheduled hearing, he would be broken out of the vehicle like some sort of action movie and would sail to a country where the US has no extradition. The plan was set in motion. Bachman was released from prison and took the money from Seth's account as requested. This totaled to be around $1,000. He used this money and purchased all of the drugs that he could afford, and then he used those drugs for personal enjoyment. Seth's plan for escape never got off the ground. Ryan Bachman would testify for the state against Seth in relation to these events. Quote, "This opportunity crossed my path on the way out the door, absolutely. Am I ashamed of it? Yes. But did I scheme and plot and plan this whole time I was in there? Absolutely not. I did not encourage him to do this plan. He was crazy, and I had to share a cell with him 24 hours a day. I'm not going to tell a crazy person that what they're saying is crazy. I saw an opportunity and I took it." End quote. Whilst researching this case, I did find myself in 2 minds over which one of Catherine's stories to believe. One of the jurors said it well when they stated that Catherine is a trained actress. How do we know that this wasn't yet another one of her performances? I won't pass comment on where I stand in regards to which one of her stories that I believe, as I would prefer not to influence your own opinion on these events. What I will say though is that Seth Mazzaglia truly disgusts me. Every little thing about him rubs me the wrong way, for both reasons that I can and cannot put into words. I find it appalling that he preys upon young women, girls that may have difficulty in their personal lives, using this turmoil to cement them into a position where they do not want to leave him. This is what I believe he did with Catherine. He found her when she was emotionally injured and provided her a safe place to live, winning her over with charms and chivalry, then slowly, bit by bit, introducing her to the insanity of his beliefs, the subject of his control, and the extent of his abuse. Abuse fueled by an emptiness which nothing can fill, and abuse masked behind the easy-to-misunderstand world of BDSM. On the subject of BDSM, I'm no expert at all, but what I do understand is that in this world of experimentation, sensation exploration, and connection building, the acts performed must be built upon the foundation of communication, consent, trust, nurture, and care. Frameworks of safety need to be set to allow both parties to explore different parts of each other within a planned and consensual realm. If these are not present, then the possibly extreme acts, even the extreme lifestyle, is nothing more than abuse. From what has been unsealed within the court documents, the ad that was posted with Seth and Catherine looking for a live-in slave, it didn't read to me like they were searching for someone to join them in a BDSM lifestyle, but more as though the couple was looking for someone to join their abusive relationship. The words used were very worrisome in my opinion. They wished to circle their new member mentally and emotionally. The master's moods could change at any second. The free time must be approved by the master. There was nothing written in this article that looked like any form of genuine interest into who this new person joining them may be. It was more so letting this new person know that if they join, they will be nothing more than a body to abuse. There may be someone out there who would have loved this opportunity. This advertisement was made for them. There is a lot of people in the world, and each into their own things. But I can't help to wonder, there's more than meets the eye here in regards to the author. Even though this was Catherine's words, was it really Seth's influence writing them? Is this how he treats Catherine? Is she his live-in slave, having to put up with his ever-changing mood, or should I say switching spirits? Does she have to endure whatever sexual punishment he chooses will satisfy him on that day? And was this ad a cry for help? She knew what her master wanted, and she had been giving it to him for almost 2 years now, so she used her awareness of what he wants, and his desire for another sexual partner, and posted this ad, hoping someone would take it, but letting them know exactly what they're in for. Had she been living with it for so long that her mind had become curious as to what it may be like to treat someone this way as well? Who knows what this is? And I will move on, as I could circle around these thoughts for quite some time. But whatever the reason may be behind the motive here, it doesn't dilute the tragedy of what happened to Elizabeth. A reoccurring theme that would come up throughout the research of this case was Elizabeth's work and love for the ocean. It appeared to have been so deeply ingrained into her identity that almost everyone who had anything to say about her would mention it. Whether it was her friends asking her if she could speak fluent octopus yet, her girlfriend asking her about how her studies are going, or her family, each and every one proudly stating during their victim impact statements that she had a bright future as a marine biologist. I found myself at a point thinking about how Elizabeth's body was never recovered, how she now drifts endlessly in the sea somewhere. And for a split second I remembered her love for the ocean, and I thought, maybe this is poetic. But those thoughts very swiftly left my mind, as there is nothing poetic about this. This is a tragedy through and through, and it doesn't matter where her body is right now. Seth and Catherine robbed this family of their ability to have closure, to see their loved one with their own eyes and make the connection that she is no longer here with them. Without that, they are as tortured, if not more, as Elizabeth was in her final moments. And speaking of her final moments, it's easy to get lost in the question of which story to believe. But let's say for a moment that I entertain Seth's argument that this was rough sex gone wrong. That man is a trained EMT, a karate black belt. He and Catherine had been engaging in bondage for years and years now. With all of this combined, he at the least should have known that they were going too far, that Elizabeth was suffering. No, there is no poetry in Elizabeth's final resting place, or anywhere near this situation for that matter. Only horror, tragedy, and the filth of two vile humans that sucked more unfortunate people into their pollution, an entire family now being affected by their toxic existence. My attention does turn to Elizabeth's family now. The love that they held for her is something that I will not soon forget. Each of them spoke about a different side of this young woman, but the glue which married all of their statements together was Elizabeth's bubbly and bright personality, and her deep love for not only the world around her, but the inhabitants within it. Her grandmother would look forward to the visits in summer where she would go to a cafe with Elizabeth and her partner Brittany. Her uncle saying that even though she didn't live with them for long, every day after class she would burst through that front door and yell, "I'm home." And her auntie would say, Elizabeth was so gullible and naive. That is what made her so beautiful. She would trust everybody, and that's probably what got her into trouble. She was so excited to make new friends and meet new people, try new things. She was too trusting and beautiful. Those two things will kill you. Elizabeth's mother would tell a heartbreaking story about how when her daughter was young, she would always say that upon growing up, she would like to be her mother's neighbor. Her mother never took it seriously, as she was expecting the teenage angst to come at any moment now, but it never came. Instead, as Elizabeth grew into a teenager, the two bonded to becoming best friends, and then when Elizabeth left to go to university, that she truly looked forward to the day where her daughter could possibly become her neighbor. These two parents gave their daughter the best that they had. They supported her in her education and also her romantic and personal interests. They did nothing but provide her with unconditional love at every turn. And for what? For some despicable excuse of a human to take her life. A human who must make up stories that he is inhabited by ancient beings so that he can deflect attention away from the fact that within him there is nothing. Emptiness, followed by more hollow emptiness. Who knows? Maybe there is something in there. A desire to dominate and abuse women is all that I can see though. And then when he is satisfied and does not wish to abuse anymore, he must stroke his ego with stories of dragons that make him feel superior to others. I don't know if Elizabeth died at the hands of this man or his partner Catherine. If it was due to Catherine's actions, she better hope that there is no such thing as karma, as 3 short years is not enough justice to pay for the pain that she caused. But whoever's fault it was, what we do know is that Elizabeth did die in the presence of these two, and neither of them chose to do the right thing, to stop the other, attempt to resuscitate, contact authorities or emergency services, or even have the respect to tell the truth from the beginning. This makes them both guilty in my opinion. 2 changes to the legal system in New Hampshire resulted from this case, as Seth's defense attempted to dig up information on Elizabeth's sexual history. The New Hampshire rape shield laws were strengthened, led by Bob Marriott, Elizabeth's father, who would fight intensely to protect future victims of sexual assault. And secondly, due to Seth attempting to avoid the victim impact statements, New Hampshire became the first state to make it non-negotiable for a convicted criminal to be in attendance of this event. Even though Seth was present for these statements, who knows if he heard what was said or not. It appears to me he was more focused on blaming others for what happened, rather than being compassionate towards a family who lost their loved one. If he was paying any semblance of attention though, I hope that the words of Elizabeth's father rattle back and forth through his mind from that day until the end of his time.
My family always loved going to the ocean. That place that once held joy and good memories now haunts us with what is gone. Lizzie struggling with a bucket of water half her own weight. Sand castles with towers and moats, waiting around in waist-deep water as she pointed out and described the creatures that were around us. Lizzie educating a stranger who had taken a sand dollar out of the water that it is okay to pick them up and look at them, but taking them out of the water will kill them. I call this Dad's Exhibit 1. May I? Sir. Why is Lizzie so happy? One reason is she is saving a frog. You may not be able to see the frog, but look close and you can see a frog gently cupped in her hands. The hands are covered with bits of leaves where she'd reached into a disgusting murk to save that frog. Why did it need saving? It was Mother's Day. And we take the cover off the pool on Mother's Day to start the process of adding chemicals to prepare the pool for family fun, but not so good for a frog. Saving a frog, time with Mommy, preparing for family fun, that is why she is happy and why it is such a good picture of her. A year and 5 months after that Mother's Day, you murdered her. I am sad that such a meaningful picture now includes this trial as part of its legacy. By the Silver Sun, by Lizzie Marriott. A gentle swan's wings beating strong, all throughout the jury long. Silky feathers, shimmer soft, holding the graceful beast aloft. But then, alas, the hunter's bow struck down the angel of new snow. The graceful white tainted by gore, the swan to fly again nevermore. The predator took in his prize with malicious golden eyes and allowed himself a short smile, the swan crying out all the while. Forward he sprang, knife in hand, touching down on the blood-soaked land, driving the blade through the angel's heart tearing the fragile life apart. The darkness brings from us the worst. The innocent always dying first.